Shalom. Welcome to the second class on Kabbalah. I'm Rabbi Alicia Magal, and this is the Jewish community of Sedona and the Verde Valley, and you're lucky enough to be able to join us on Zoom or on recording. Welcome, welcome. I see some new people just joined us. Glad to see you all. So I will now share my screen. And today will be a bit technical. I want you to hang in there because these are foundational elements that you're going to need to understand the mystical text that I'm going to introduce next week. Let me make sure the sound is on. Share. All right. So today we're going to talk about these books, Sefer Yetzirah, Bahir, and Zohar. And as I told you in the first lesson, you don't have to remember anything. You don't have to take notes. Whatever, just let it wash over you if this is the first time you're hearing it. If you have delved a bit, you'll go, oh, yes, that's how that connects. So just take it on the level where you are right now. This is a beautiful frontispiece of the Sefer Yetzirah, and I just thought it was so beautiful. And it says, Zeh Hashar, this is the gateway. And Kabbalah was considered a kind of gateway, so they have this architectural gate here that's so beautiful of the Book of Formation. So we'll be talking about several of these foundational books in Kabbalah. Now, I have to tell you that sometimes I get annoyed because people try to take shortcuts. And there are many celebrities these days and over the past few years who have taken to studying, in quotes, Kabbalah. They'll wear a red string for good luck, but they're not going to delve as deeply as you're doing. They might go to the Kabbalah Center, which is on Robertson in LA, with Joseph Berg, and they may buy expensive books because they want a shortcut to spirituality, to prosperity, to calm and ease, and an antidote to anxiety. That's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to actually delve more deeply and to learn the basics and to do the work. And so I don't want us to be one of these dabblers that are like these celebrities that are photographed, and I could have shown you 50 or 60 more photographs of celebrities that have something written on them that says Kabbalah or a red string or some kind of good luck charm, and they take it, they kind of dabble. So we're not dabblers. We're not going to just get a very brief vocabulary. As a matter of fact, so many people were convinced to buy the whole 23-volume set of Zohar that we were offered, and we're still being offered whole sets of unopened 23 volumes that people bought and then never studied it. So I wanted to start with this slide to tell you, let's not be like them. Let's really study at the level we're ready for. So Sefer Yetzirah. Remember, we talked about the world of Yetzirah. So this is the book of formation, Yotzer Or Ovore Choshech. If you come to morning blessings services, we have that blessing about forming light, Yotzer. It's the same verb. And there's this beautiful introduction in the first lines that say, there are 32 wondrous paths of wisdom through which the Holy One engraved and created the world. 10 Sefirot and 22 letters. And Sefirot originally meant countings, numbers, but it also came to have other meanings like these spheres, where we get that word actually, these energy centers. And you'll see how it developed throughout the Kabbalistic literature to mean more than just numbers. So the letters and the numbers became extremely important. It was based on Ma'aseh Bereshit, which means the work of creation. God said, let there be light, and there was light, and there was formation, and then what happened? So that's what Kabbalah is trying to explain and explore. It uses terms like running and returning and lightning flash. And these paths consist of 10 primordial numbers and 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So originally those numbers were called Sefirot, countings. Now let's look at the letters, because if you studied chemistry, remember the periodic table of the elements, and helium was very light and other elements were very heavy and they had their place. It's the same with the letters. They're considered the building blocks of creation. They're not just sound symbols, they actually have weight. So I'm going to teach you something about the letters. If you know Hebrew, this will help. If you don't know Hebrew, that's okay. Just know that it exists. So there are 3 mother letters. There are 7 doubles and there are 12 simples. Let's go into that. Here are the 3 mother letters. Aleph, which stands for avir, air. Mem, water, which stands for mayim. Shin, which stands for fire. So 3 elements. And look where they are positioned in this model of the tree of life. Here's Shin, fire, Esh. These are the horizontal underpinnings. Here's Aleph, avir, air. And at the lower triangle, Mem, water, Mayim. So the Hebrew letters are the building blocks of creation, and they are intensely contracted conduits of divine light. Remember, let there be light, whoosh. Or if you think back on the Big Bang, that flowing forth of divine energy that was intuited by the Kabbalists, and only now the physicists and mathematicians are catching up with that idea. And these are the channels of divine speech. God said, let there be light. God said, let there be a firmament and divide the waters. God said, so all of these God said, these represent another flow of energy that made creation. And so as we're reading in Genesis, the Kabbalists took each of those pronouncements and sort of configured it into their model. Here are the doubles, double letters that have hard and soft sounds. Now, it used to be in the Ashkenazi pronunciation that taf, without a dagesh, without this dot, would be a saf. So I put a very small arrow there. But we definitely have doubles in the others. Bet or vet. And it's formed like a house. So this is a very basic house formation, a roof, a wall, a foundation, and an opening. Remember, Hebrew is read right to left, so here's the opening door. But it could be bet, it could be vet. And again, the idea of having hard and soft sounds, it's like the hard is the running and the soft is the returning. They had all kinds of ideas about why they were hard and soft sounds. In the ancient pronunciation, there was Gimel and Gimel. There was a J. We don't have that anymore. We pronounce Gimel, whether it has a dot or not, we pronounce it G. But I wanted to show you because back in the days when this was being formed, they had 2 sounds, D and D, like a DTH, but we don't have that anymore. Sometimes the Yemenites, in their accent, you can still hear a difference. Kaf and Chaf, this is the cup of your hand. If you form a cup of your hand, it looks like a kaf, right? And that also means spoon. So it's the palm of your hand when it's cupped. It's also a spoon, and it's formed in this curved form with a dot, k, that sort of blocks it, makes it a hard sound. Or the air can flow through, chaf, kaf, chaf. The next one is pe, fe, and that is a mouth. It means mouth. And in a certain kind of calligraphy, not this one, there would be the white space inside would look like a bet, which would be blessing, because blessing should come forth from your mouth. If you're ever in synagogue and I show it to you in the Torah, you would notice that. So even the negative space sometimes has meaning. Pe, fe. Probably it was resh and resh, but now it's whatever R you can do. The Russians, when they come to Israel, go r, and the French go r, and we probably do r. So the resh is kind of problematic, but it's in that doubles configuration. And taf saf, which in modern Hebrew is all t. Now, why do we have these double letters? Why do we have the mother letters? They are considered they're considered times that God said, let there be something and let us make something. And they took those sentences apart and connected it with the letters. What's left in the 22? Well, the simple letters, the 12 simple ones. So we have the three mothers, Aleph, Mem, and Shin. Those are the horizontal lines, Shin, Aleph, Mem. Fire, air, water. And then we have the seven doubles. Every time God saw, so we have the God making, that's the three mother letters. God saw, if you go back to Genesis, you'll see you could count 7 times. And those are the vertical lines. There's the Bet, the Kaf, the Daled, the Resh, Taf, Gimel, and Pei, some of which have double sounds today in modern Hebrew, but here they appear. And then all of the simples, all the rest of them, here I have them in Hebrew, I wrote them out how they sound. Those are the diagonal paths. Boom, 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 boom. You see all the diagonals? And perhaps those correspond to the 12 zodiac constellations. So everything's connected because it's all energy, you see. The vibration of the universe in creation has sound, it has quality. There's something there that affects us. And so there's room in Judaism for the zodiac constellations. You're not supposed to make your big life decisions according to zodiac, but it has some impact. Every month has a zodiac constellation energy. So all of that is right there in Judaism. And we've been talking about these sephirot as we're counting the Omer. And it's the 7 lower ones. So the first week was Chesed, outpouring. The second week was Gevurah, limits. The third week was the balance of the two, harmony, beauty. This last week that just ended on Shabbat was Netzach, endurance and long range planning and practice. I love this week. This is Hod. This is very graceful and easy, and it's splendor. It's also Hodaya, which is gratitude. And today is actually Tiferet in Hod. So it's balance in this idea of grace and beauty. Isn't that a great place to be today? And then we'll continue on the other weeks before we get to Shavuot, foundation, intimate connection, and groundedness, malchut, owning it all, culmination. Now, many of you have heard of gematria, and perhaps you've even used some of it. It's numerology, where there's a sort of code, where Aleph is 1, Bet is 2. This isn't the only way they can do it. Sometimes they do it backwards. It's called Atbash, Atbash, where the ending is 1 and you work backwards. But this is the most common. There are also systems where the final letters have a value, but this is the basic one that you need to get really familiar with. So Aleph to Taf is 1 through 9. Then 10 through 90, the 10s, that's Yud, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samech, Ayin, Pei, Tzadi. And then the last 4 letters are the hundreds, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Taf. And there's so many ways that we use this. Like, for instance, it just came to my mind, Emet, truth, Aleph, Mem, Taf. Do you realize the beginning, the middle, and the end? So truth embraces the whole range of possibility, whereas Sheker, Shin, Kuf, Resh, that's all right at the end. That means lie, what's not true. So they even take the placing of the letters and give it meaning. Here are some equivalencies, and you can actually go online and type in a word and it'll give you several equivalents. But these are some of the basic ones that many people know. Ahava, love, equals 13. How do I get that? Aleph is 1, He is 5, Bet is 2, Aleph is 1. Add it up, you get 13. If 2 people are in love, that's 13 and 13, and that is godly. because Yud He Vav He equals 26. So you can imagine sometimes I say something like that at a wedding. You represent 13, you represent 13, and together it's a godly combination. Also, if you take apart the word echad, meaning one, it also equals 13 because God is one. Aleph, Chet, Daled, 1, 8, and 4. So you can have words that don't sound alike, they don't look alike, but they have the same numerological weight. That's called gematria. It's the same root as geometry. So it's holy geometry in a way. Here's another example. The word for Sinai, Sinai, Sin Yud Nun Yud equals 130. How do I get that? Sin is 60, Yud is 10, Nun is 50, and again, Yud is 10. You add it up, 130. Do you see how I'm doing that? Well, here's another word, completely different, but it has the same sum, 130, and it's sulam. It would have an u vowel underneath it here. Samech is 60, lamed is 30, mem, even the final mem, is 40, and it means a ladder, because Sinai was a ladder from earth to heaven. Does that blow your mind? I just love that. Or a semel. It's a symbol. So Sinai is a symbol of what we do on Shavuot when we come up to the Bima and we receive Torah again. Sinai was a symbol of the gift of Torah, Matan Torah, from God to us. So you can play this game and people do it a lot. I have to tell you that I don't live in this realm all that much because I know you can add one for the unity of the word, you can add hey for the, and thus add 5. You can fudge it a little. And so I think it's interesting, it's nice. I like the play of the numbers, but it's not what I do all the time. I saw Nancy asked a question. Yes.
Is there any other language that does it like this, that has this numerical?
You'll be surprised to know that English does it too. There's a lot of numerology in English, and they have various systems where they reduce it, like 12 would actually be a 3, you know, it would like that. So there's all kinds of ways to do it. Look it up. Look up numerology, and it will be a whole new world. Now, many of you have made donations to the synagogue or to other organizations in multiples of 18. Did you know why? Because Chet is 8, Yud is 10, which equals Chai. So sometimes if you combine letters, they equal a word.
Which is life.
And the word equals a number. So if you have Chet, 8, and 10, Yud, you put it together, all of a sudden you're reading it. Chai, oh, life. So you want to offer a donation in something that's life affirming. And so you order 36, 72, and I just got a donation that was 818 because you can't multiply that much and know where the 18 lands. So I did a baby naming and I got this lovely big donation. It was 818 because 8 is luck, and the wife has a Chinese background. So she combined her background before she converted to something that would be symbolic in her culture and also in the Jewish culture. Lovely, 818. So you can always do that. Does anybody have a medallion or a pendant that says Chai? So that would equal 18, and it does say life. Or if somebody has a 28th anniversary, that would be 20, Kaf, and 8 is Chet, Koach. That means strength. So if I were doing an anniversary of somebody in their 28th year, I would say something about strength. It's just one more way of combining numbers and letters and meaning. Any other comments before I leave this slide? Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on. Now, I want to speak about the Bahir. Bahir means light, so it's the book of illumination. And if you look it up online, you get some beautiful book covers. This one I just loved. It was like this mystical eye giving out light. Isn't that beautiful? And it was compiled from many manuscripts. Nobody really knows who the authors were, but in 12th century Provence in France, it was combined by the Kabbalists there in southern France, and new editions keep coming out. And it further clarified and named these 10 sephirot, these energy centers. Each of the books went a little further and delved a little bit deeper. And the Bahir links the sephirot with midot, which are attributes. Those of you who are counting the Omer, you know that you're looking at these attributes. Well, this is how long ago this idea came about, that the energy centers replicated or hinted at an aspect of God's creativity. God flowed God's energy and light out, chesed. When do we offer that loving kindness? So God had limits. Here's where the ocean ended. This is where the flood ended. This is where the edges of a tree come. This is where the end of creativity came, and then came Shabbat. So limits. So how do we find limits? So each of the creative energies that we could attribute to God, we can also attribute to ourselves in some small way. That's a wonderful consideration. So in the Bahir, it linked with these attributes, connecting divine attributes to the counterpart for humans. And we tend to think in sort of active and passive, and we think in something that moves forward, something that contains and holds back. And we tend to call it male and female, although it's not exact or consistent, but it's just one of the ways that we understand it. So here's the right column. Imagine you're looking in a mirror. So this is your right side. So your right shoulder would be chesed. Your right side would be, in the higher realms, chokhmah is a kind of flash of wisdom where you know something and then it's gone. And bina is where you hold on to it and you understand it better. This is the holding side, the left column. So chesed, outpouring, love, no limits. Gevura, limits and discernment. And, this is holding, bringing up a child that takes many years. This was just the pleasure of the first moment, So there's this female side of consideration. Actually, Bina is considered the upper mother, and it's connected with Leah. You could also connect all of these with different patriarchs and matriarchs, which is a whole other discussion, which perhaps we'll have at Sukkot when that is delved into. The central column is the balance. And if you study yoga, you're used to hearing about chakras in the energy centers right down the middle. But in Kabbalah, we have the extremes on the sides as well. So Tiferet is the balance, the harmonious coming together of the outflow and the limit. So we've got both. We've got like inspiration and we've got perspiration, kind of both. All right. Then we have Netzach, which is in this column. That's endurance and persistence and the practices you do over many, many years. And this week is Hod, the gentler, graceful outcome of all of the work, where of course you can sew, of course you can ski, of course you can play the piano, but only if you put work in on this side. And then the balance, Yesod, foundation. So this is the foundation that God gave to the world, and what is our foundation? How do we deal with the family? How do we deal with education? What is our foundational belief? It's also generative. It's also sexuality and intimate connection. And then the Malchut is all of the legs and the feet. Malchut actually means kingdom, but in this context, Kabbalistically, it's the grounding, it's the manifestation, it's the physical world. So here we have the midot, the attributes that we've been focusing on. What a wonderful time to be studying this, just when we're focusing on it between Passover and Shavuot, between Chesed, these seven, between Chesed and Malchut. We're really focusing on it every single week. Remember, you can interrupt me at any time if you have something to ask or to comment on.
Question?
Yes, Raya.
So I think The 11th sphere that was kind of just vaguely there in one of the slides, I think it was
Dot.
Dot. Yeah. If you haven't talked about that, would you?
That's just knowing. That's in the third eye. It's also the throat. It's interesting. It could be speech or it could be knowing. I consider it the place where you put the tefillin.
Because it seemed like one of the most central, and it connected with 6 of the other spheroids.
Yes.
And the fact that it's illuminated is kind of
Well, this
cute.
is just showing the columns. I had to eliminate some of things to just concentrate in this particular illustration just on the columns. I have another illustration that's just the triangles, the triads, and another one that's just the pathways. So nothing's been taken out. I'm just focusing on one thing here.
Yeah, it seems though that it is illuminated in some of them, which is curious. I mean, it's an 11th one, which, different than 10 numerically.
Right, it's considered a sort of invisible center, mystical, right there. Thank you for bringing that up.
And another question, somehow my mind links the word Netzach with like victory.
Yes, Netzach means victory, but it's victory after a lot of effort.
Okay, thank you.
It also means Lenetzach means forever, so it has a sort of future connotation. Thank you for bringing that up. Those of you who know modern Hebrew, you'll say, well, wait a minute, that means hero. Gibor means a hero. Well, yes, ancient language had to be adapted to modern language. As a matter of fact, if we get to Ezekiel next week, you're going to see the word chashmal. Well, that's the modern word for electricity. So they had to find and create and bring new layers of meaning in the modern world from ancient words. Here's the Zohar, the book of splendor, the shining. Like the word Sohorai means 2 lights. The Zohar is splendor. Anita, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I've never been really clear on the difference between Yesod and Malchut.
Yesod,
foundation and grounding. I mean,
it's in the same direction, and it's still part of. Okay, Yesod is part of the 6, the Vav, that world, and Malchut is the lower Hay. It's absolute manifestation, and it's the final expression in our world of duality and separateness. And you know what? Each of these worlds exists in relation and within each of the others. So we're just separating like you'd stretch a rubber band, but if you let go, boom, they'll all come back. And as a matter of fact, I have a graphic on my wall out here that is concentric circles where each of the Sefirot is like looking from the top instead of from the side, and they're all within each other. So we're just pulling them apart to sort of talk about them and get examples, but they're so related, and because of the vibration, you might be in one and then you're in the other. And I honor your question more than I'm satisfied with my answer. All right, so here's the Zohar. And, many of these books are attributed to patriarchs or to older venerated people in history, but they actually were penned and came to be like in the Middle Ages, like the Yetzirah. Oh, they said, oh, that's Abraham. Well, probably maybe it was Akiva. I mean, by the time of the Talmud, they were discussing it. So you never can kind of tell really who is the actual author because there were so many manuscripts. So Zohar, which means the shining, is, oh, I had so many more things I wanted to tell you, but I'm going through it. It means splendor or radiance, and it first appeared in Spain in the 13th century, and it really is considered the most important work of Kabbalah, of Jewish mysticism. And it's a commentary on the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, but it spends so many pages going deeply, deeply, deeply into each word, into each letter. It's written in medieval Aramaic and medieval Hebrew. and it contains a mystical discussion of the nature of God. It also delves into the origin and structure of the universe, the nature of souls and sin and good and evil, and many topics. And we think that probably Moshe de Leon, he probably worked on this, but he ascribed the work to a rabbi of the 2nd century, whom we talked about last week, Shimon Bar Yochai. Remember, that was the legend that during the time of the Roman persecution, that he hid in a cave for 13 years studying Torah with his son Elazar. And during this time, that's when he was inspired by God to write the Zohar, according to Moshe de Leon. And it's framed, it's a very interesting way it's narrated. It's like a group of wandering mystics headed by the Grand Master, Shimon Bar Yochai. And they're all talking to each other, and they're interpreting Torah while traveling through the Holy Land. So it's kind of like a travel log as they're looking at each Torah portion. And this act of traveling allows for freedom of imagination. And along the way, along the journey, it's the ideal place for expounding the deepest mysteries of the Torah. Now, I wanted to tell you that there are many, many volumes. This is one edited by Gershom Scholem, who was a 20th century brilliant Kabbalist. And I have a funny story about that. When I was studying in France for my junior year abroad, I was studying Le Mysticisme du Moyen Âge, the mysticism of the Middle Ages. And the teacher, who was very strange looking, and she always had a cigarette, and the smoke would rise above one closed eye. I mean, she was very fascinating looking. And she said to me, Mademoiselle, vous avez votre mysticisme très riche. You have your own mysticism that was very rich, because she had said, vous êtes juive? And I was a little scared, because here I was in Europe on my own, and I was being asked, are you Jewish? And I had this like flashback of my mother in the war being found out that she was Jewish. But then I jumped back to being in 1968 and saying, oui, je suis juive. And I said that. And she said, you have a very rich mystical tradition. And she handed me Gershom Scholem's thick book on mysticism in French, which I then proceeded to read. Probably understood none of it, but that's somewhere back in an old file. I haven't thought of that for many years, but I wanted to share that. However, this year and last year, I've been studying with Danny Matt. Here's Daniel Matt, who was plucked out of professorship by Madame Pritzker. This is the Pritzker edition. And she said, you are such an incredible and knowledgeable scholar about the Zohar. I want to publish a series of books that you will write. And that's what he's been doing for all of these years. So I have 2 of the volumes. We have a few more downstairs. And I wanted to read you just a little bit so that you see what it's like, even in translation. So we're studying in Aramaic with a Hebrew translation, and then we dive into the notes in English. It's a fascinating study with him. And you should hear him just reading fluently the Aramaic and giving you the fine points and saying, this isn't original. He really was not an Aramaic speaker, but he wanted it to sound old. So look at the Hebrew, and he'll just take it apart like that. And we're just in amazement listening to him. So here is from one of the pages that we were studying. It is written in Exodus, God spoke to proclaim words. When the Blessed Holy One revealed God's self and spoke, those above and below trembled, and the souls of Israel departed. In other words, we actually died. That word flew from above to below, was engraved in the 4 winds of the world, then ascended and descended. This is all the energy of the word. Got that? It was absorbed by mountains and infused with dew from above. It circled around Israel, restoring their souls, so we came back to life, circled and engraved itself in its place on the tablets of stone. And so it was with every single word. Rabbi Shimon said, he's quoting as if, every word was filled with all those meanings, with all those elements, decrees, rewards, and punishments, mysteries, and secrets, like a treasure ship filled with everything. When a word issued, that's issued from God, it seemed to be one. But as it was engraved, 70 branches appeared in that word. Remember, at the time they were thought there were 70 languages in the world, rising with it. And 50 crowns minus one, that's 49 on this side. And 50 minus one, that's 49 on that side. Like a hammer striking a rock, from Jeremiah, like a hammer shattering rock. Israel saw. And all later generations were present there, all of them, receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai. That is what we are going to be reenacting on Shavuot up at our bima, when I'll be chanting the 10 Commandments, and then we'll have a ketubah, which I'll update, where we're recommitting to that intimate connection. But look at that description. There's a word that seems like one, but it splits into all the languages, and it circles and it comes down and it revives us. I mean, what an incredible meditation. That's just one paragraph from one volume based on one little phrase in Exodus 21. This is not just wearing a red string, my friends.
So this sounds, if you're saying the souls died, it's like a near-death experience.
Absolutely.
Rebirth.
There is a midrash that says that when God spoke with that first thunder, the Aleph, the huge sound on Mount Sinai, everybody died. And then we were all revived. And that's when we said, Moses, you go listen to the rest and tell us later. This is too powerful. It's a midrash. But the midrash was known, and the Kabbalah, it reinterprets it even in a bigger way. I mean, so an hour and a half of this, and it's like your mind is melted. However, you feel like that you never can read the simple shot, the simple lines ever again the same way. Well, what I'm going to do next week is talk about the Ari, Luriat, and Lurianic Kabbalah. So I just want to sort of introduce that by saying, after the expulsion from Spain in 1492, there had been false messiahs. 1500s had many false messiahs or failed messiahs, and people sort of escaped. They went to Sfat up in the mountains, and they looked for a different kind of answer. They turned to mysticism because militarily they were powerless. There was no way to actually rise as a nation in any other way, except if you're searching for some kind of power and control, mysticism was an answer. So they called him the lion, Hari, the holy lion, and his teachings form the basis of much of modern Kabbalah, as it was written down by his scribe Chaim Vital. And how many of you have been to Sfat? Wow. Did you visit the synagogue, the Ari synagogue? There's a bench right outside where we sat, and then we went in when it was open, and there's all kinds of pictures you can find online of the pulpit and the stairs going up. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. I'm going to stop the share for a minute because I did a lot in a very short time, and I'll be happy to go back to any of the slides if you have questions before we have our meditation at the end. And I thought bringing in the letters and the numbers was an important aspect of one part of Kabbalah. Kabbalah means receiving. So there are many ways it was received, many ways it was interpreted, and many ways applied. So I'd love some reactions to this or questions, and I'll be happy to show the slide again to illustrate something that I may have left out. Yes, Nancy.
Well, I heard the people talking about the Kabbalah. Why would now I want to read it. I don't know if I'm ready for it, but I want to read it. But why does one read the Kabbalah? I remember as a teenager going to my Orthodox grandfather and saying, I want to learn the Kabbalah. And my grandfather said, no, you don't. Forget it.
He was right. He was right.
Okay. Why does one read the Kabbalah?
Well, there isn't a Kabbalah that you read. You study it in various forms and books and interpretations. There's a book called Practical Kabbalah, because part of Kabbalah is how do you influence God? How do you combine the letters so that rain will come, or that there'll be a golem who will protect in Prague? There's a whole story about that. So part of it is to come close, this Dvekut, but part of it was kind of that the sages could heal. They could pray for pregnancies. They could pray for crops. There was an element of magical intention where you could sway God. It's called theurgic, where what we do here on earth would rouse the powers from above to answer your prayer, and that Kabbalah was one of those means. Let me show you this one again. So by permutation of the Yud He Vav He letters, by changing the order, because there's an upper He and a lower He. There's the Yud, which is the spark of inspiration from God, and there's the Vav, the connector down to earth when I do it vertically. And each month has a different permutation and a different energy that is studied in Bnei Yisachar. That's named for one of the tribes that knew the times and the seasons. So there isn't one Kabbalah that you read, but Bnei Yisachar is about these permutations and the energies of the month. Each month having to do with a different organ of the body and a different matriarch and patriarch. I mean, they really make all these tables of connections. But let me give you another example. Elohim, Aleph Lamed He Yud Mem, comes out to 86 if you count it out. But Hateva, nature, also comes to 86. So when we say Yud He Vav He, we're talking about the heavenly aspect of God in one way. And when we talk about Elohim, we're talking about God manifested in the natural world. Now, they're both names of, or titles of God, really. We don't know the name of God, but they're both aspects of God. And one is sort of this heavenly creator, and the other is manifested in the natural world. And by using this numerology, they say, well, since the word Elohim and the word Hateva, nature, have the same weight, 86, they are connected. So you get a kind of inner commentary by combining letters and finding out what their weight and their energy and their inner meaning, their hidden meaning might be. So I wanted to bring that example out.
That was an example of adding the ha before.
Yes.
Like talking about, and if you didn't, it would come to 81, which is a 9, which is completion.
Right. So what you did right now is the play on gematria that is that takes some people their whole life. And I had that same thing. I said, wait a minute, Teva only comes to 81. Oh, then I looked back and it said Ha Teva. Oh, you have to add 5. So you absolutely got it. That it can be manipulated a bit, but why? To make a point, to find an inner meaning, to add a layer of importance and understanding to what otherwise might just be a word. So now it's a whole concept and a connection. I love it that you know that much. That's great.
I'm also wondering, I'm thinking from something about the tarot, that the tarot and perhaps even astrology are based in the Kabbalah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And different interpretations in the Middle Ages. There was a lot of communication between Jews and Muslims and Christians at a certain level of literacy. Like it would be the monks, because most of the people were illiterate, but the Jews were literate, many of them. Not the women so much, but the men were pretty much literate in Hebrew. And they were the translators between Arabic and Latin. and the Hebrew was the in between. And that was like in the golden age of Spain, that's what was happening, that there was all this mixture of mathematical, mystical, and musical interpretation. Oh, I like that, the 3 M's. And that's why Spanish music is so great, because it has this oriental beat to it. And I could go on about that, but there was a lot of interpreting for their own teachings. So there's some things in medieval Kabbalah that went sort of a Christian way, and that we don't hold to. So I'm teaching you Jewish Kabbalah. Yes, Patty.
I just wanted to share something that I experienced when I read the Sefer Yetzirah. Because you mentioned the different permutations of the Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. And there was a really complicated meditation where you take all the 12 letters that aren't one of the 3 mothers and that aren't the doubles, and all the leftover, diagonal letters, and meditate with each of those as you permutate those, the Yud-Heh Vav-Heh 12 times in a circle. And then by the time you've done that in a meditation, you're actually meditating. There's quite powerful meditation.
Yes. So I did that with our lulav one time with my friend Tamima Itzkowitz. Some of you heard her speak about customs of death and dying, and she is a true Kabbalist. And it took us 2 hours. Now you have come to Sukkot and you have shaken the lulav in all the directions, but we did it through the permutations with all the letters and the vowels, and it took 2 hours. Now here are the permutations. I happen to have it on my bulletin board of the months. And do you see that the Yud-Heh and Vav-Heh are turned around, and like Adar, which has Purim in it, is completely backwards. It's upside, it's just funny. And each of the months has a different letter, and it has a different permutation of the Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. And you can really go into that. That would be B'nai Yisachar. Yes, Patty.
Just one more thing about that was that you meditate in it in a circle, just like a calendar. And so because you meditated in directions.
See, the directions, when I'm talking to Ukwala, do you know Ukwala? He's my Native American buddy who calls in the directions, and we've had some wonderful conversations, and we even did a wedding once together where he called in the directions, and then I did the wedding, and we were talking about tribal connections to land and nature, and what are we if not a tribe, right? So that was just amazing, and I was showing him my tefillin and some of my prayer tools, the fringes. There's a lot that you could find in common when you go back to our origins. These are very good points that you're bringing up. There was something else that I wanted to say about either the Yud-Heh Vav-Heh configuration or the doing it in circle. I'm trying to think. It kind of went in and out of my mind. Well, Reb Zalman of blessed memory, Zalman Schachter Shalomi, who gave me one of my ordinations, he remembers going up to the roof at a conference, and he was looking east, and there was a Native American who was also at the conference, who was doing his morning prayers, and he said that the Native American looked at Reb Zalman, put on his tefillin, the phylacteries that have a box here with blessings and here, and the straps, and he showed it to him, and the Native American, who was a shaman, picked it up and looked at it, and he went, "Good knots." Like he got that everything had significance. In fact, those knots create Yud, Daled, and Shin. The way you wrap it which is Shaddai, which is one of the nurturing, protective aspects of God. And we have so much. If you just dig a little bit, you find treasure. You really just find treasure. So a lot of these stories are just coming to me as we're talking. Any other reactions or questions, and a slide that I might have to go back to clarify something? Yes, Susan Burnett.
Rabbi, you had shown us the picture of the columns in the body, and you had also spoken about the horizontal lines, and you had mentioned there that you were going to talk about the diagonal lines later. Is that in a different class?
The diagonals are the 12 simples. And since there are 12, those might have to do with the zodiac. Some people connect it with the zodiac. So I can show you that one again, and we'll see them right here. Share. Okay, so here are the simples. You see Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, etc. They're all here on the green, all the greens. See that? Is that clear to you now?
Now, my question was about how they relate in the body. You had showed us the picture of the body with the columns that went center, right, left.
I see what you mean. Well, there are these triangles. So I have another model which I can put in for next week that is this triangle, and then the Chesed Gevurah Tiferet triangle, and then the Netzach Hod Yesod triangle. Those are the three triads, and those have a combination. But the pathways are this zigzag of energy light from the most ethereal to the most grounded, the most, I would say, this is unity and this is duality. And there actually is another world, Ein Sof. There's this idea of complete unification, which we can't even imagine. That's way above the heavens even. It's just like we can't even meditate on that, which is interesting because Bet faces forward. In Hebrew, you read right to left, correct? And there's a wall, and you're not supposed to look back at Aleph because we came in at Bet. We don't know Aleph. We don't know the origins of creation. And then we spend, volumes trying to figure it out. But even the letter Bet has this warning not to delve into mysteries. And to go back to not being allowed to study, as you were supposed to be 40, male, married, grounded before you dared to study any of this. And then it could only be taught one-on-one. And even then, it couldn't be taught in detail. It had to be just the chapter headings to which the student already had grasped the material. And we have the story of the 4 who went into paradise, into Pardes, into that space, and only Rabbi Akiva came out whole. So again, it's dangerous. I mean, I've had out-of-body experiences doing this kind of meditating, especially with the vowels and the permutations of the Yud He Vav He. And I wasn't grounded. My vessel wasn't strong enough at that time. So it can have power, just like a car or a horse or a motor can kill and be destructive, or it can get you where you want to go if you know how to master it and you are strong. So we have to master it and not be taken away and whisked away. And some people, again, want a shortcut. They want like a high. They want to get to that place of unity, but without doing the groundwork and without building up their strength spiritually. And I say this quite seriously because I have seen it. I've seen, and I think it's why kids take drugs or something, because they have that yearning and they don't understand that you can get to that place, but you need to earn it. I remember once when I was 15 and I was in ballet class, and my teacher said, Alicia, straight away from the corner. I usually was at the front of the line. And so it was run, run, leap, run, run, leap, run, run, leap. And I had this moment where I felt I wasn't touching the ground, and all I felt was the leap. And I felt that I got to the other end of the room, hooked to something higher than me. Whoosh. And when I got to the other end of the room, I said to myself, my 15-year-old inner self, I said, if I could get there through dance or through music or through poetry or through something, then that's how I always want to open the door. And I never want to use chemicals or a shortcut to kick that door open. And I never have. Now, maybe I'm strong enough now that if I were presented with some kind of, I don't know, some kind of opportunity to delve into the mysteries, who knows? But up to now, I've stayed with that philosophy that I developed that one day in ballet class when I was 15. Is this striking any memories for any of you? Raya?
Yeah, and could you bring up the slide that had the spheroid in connection to where on the body they are?
Sure.
Because I want to speak to, well, I could speak a lot to what you were saying too, but to go back to what Anita was asking about the difference between Yesod and Malchut.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, to me, in our society, and probably a lot of Western societies, we're very head-oriented. You know, our schooling and everything prizes, you know, what our minds can do. And you know, a lot of people do get in trouble spiritually, you know, with drugs or without, by being out of body or not embodying things well enough. So the yesod is like probably the perineum area, you know, it's the base of the spine. And that central channel, you know, we're here, it's a center column, is emphasized a lot, like in yogic religions with the Kundalini rising and everything like that. But to really bring it down to earth, you know, we need to give it the legs, and we need to come all the way down to the Malkut, which I think is really, you know, it's like bringing heaven to earth. You know, the descension I mentioned actually last week, you know, it's
Right.
like, can we bring it all the way in?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes when I'm leading services, especially if it's in the Amidah, and you know, I'm elevated, and it has happened sometimes that I have to like bend my knees and dig into the earth and feel my heels because I realize I'm leading the service and I can't go anywhere right now. I can't elevate to that extent. I can if I'm a Jew in the pew and someone else is leading, because that's happened too. But I need to ground. I'm the vessel here. I'm holding the space. As a matter of fact, before you come in, I walk around the whole sanctuary to create a vessel of safety and compassion. I mean, rachamim. It's not exactly the right word, but it's an accepting space that I'm holding so that when the first person comes in, it's already a full room. Any other slides? Yes, Nancy.
The I don't, you know, the extent of my knowledge about this is limited, but what they say Malchut is nobility and royalty, and I find it's so humbling to see that's where the feet are. You know, you think the crown, but that's not what this is. And I think of Yesud as foundation. If they give Yesud, the next word they'll say is foundation, and then Malchut, the next word they'll say is nobility, and Raya is saying perineum, but a lot of people say it's this week is the sex organs. You know,
yes, absolutely. It's intimate relations as well, and it is the base of the spine as well. It's that whole area, and it's your gut, you know, and it's just so many things. And Malchut is like Melech and Malka, you know, it's like king and queen. I'm sorry that the phone is ringing, but I can't do anything about it. Let's see. I turned off the volume. Yeah, so this is just a model, and it's open to interpretation, and it's open to variations. That's what I love about counting the Omer, because you're thinking about the combinations of Hod in Yesod, of Chesed in Malchut. I mean, all of these different combinations. And the first time you do it, you basically just count. The second year, you get something will pop up like, oh, I got Chesed this year. And another year, oh, Hod, oh, it's just, I'm living with it. And so after 15, 16, 20, 25 years, you have this mellow feeling of just checking in and flowing with all the different attributes, and you feel connected in a way that is just unique. It's just beautiful. So wherever you are on your path and on your journey, just enjoy it, because you'll never have that beginner mind again. And once it gets a little bit too easy, you may get a little bit arrogant and think that you know it all. And then you'll get humble again, because you'll realize that, oh, that reminds me, in 1982, I knew everything. You know why? Because I had finished the notebook of the holiday workshop class that I was teaching. And it's a big, thick notebook, and I knew it all. And then I started studying again to be a rabbi, and I realized I had been standing on a little hill, and I was in front of a mountain range, and I knew nothing. But I remember that feeling, you know, I was really arrogant. You know, I said, I finished the course, I can teach it, I know it all. So, you know, you have mastery, and then you have humility, and you start all over again. Linda.
Just, if you could touch back on nature and its relevance, its importance into what we are looking at.
Well, you know, you go outside and you see that there's dry land and there's water, and you see there are different animals, and you see that there's fruit trees. And of course, we said, how did this come to be? Remember the Just So stories? How did this come to be? And so we go back to Genesis, and we look from light up to humans, and we see everything in between. And the Kabbalists said, there's got to be more to it than this. There's got to be how this all came. And there are little sparks of the original light in everything. How do we raise the sparks? How do we recreate and do a tikkun to bring back in what we see around us in nature to that unification that we see duality. We better see duality. You better know the difference between a red light and a green light, between the edge of the curb and the street. You better know these differences. We live in a world of duality, but ultimately it all is unified. So remember Rabbi Nachman, who was a big Kabbalist, he went out in nature and meditated every day. And he thought that there was, every grass had an angel that said, grow, grow. Because it's amazing. You put in a seed and it grows. I mean, what is that? We didn't happen. We just watered. I was talking to my cactus yesterday and saying, you're doing a beautiful job. You've just given 3 babies, and you've been quiet for like 4 years. I'm so proud of you.
What about the roses? How are they doing?
The roses are doing great, and all the petunias got eaten. So there you go.
Balance.
Balance, right. But I took it quite personally. I was quite affronted. All right, so what we're going to do now is spend a moment just meditating on the Ratz V'Shov, the running and returning, and see whatever comes out. We'll do this for about just 3 or 4 minutes. And I think it's really important, after all, you know, just like Raya said, we're in our head, to get into a different place, somewhere in your body, and feel the vibration and realize that we are part of that vibrating universe. come back. Come to the room and feel the chair and blink a few times and open your eyes and smile at us and say hi. You're back in your body. Good. So any last takeaway from today? I'm going to call on you because that way I can keep you all in line here, one above the other. Linda Waddell. A word or phrase.
Color.
Color. Thank you.
Color.
Pam Miller.
Learning.
Yeah.
Thank you. Diane Bouguet.
Oh, wait.
You're unmuted.
Oh, flowing.
Flowing.
Yeah.
Sheila Jackman, I unmuted you.
Movement.
Movement. Yeah, I found myself kind of vibrating to that music. Thank you. Janet.
Interconnected.
Interconnecting. Yes. Yes, we're pulling these things apart to analyze them, but then we want to put them back together and feel them as a whole. Susan Burnett.
Letting go and washing.
Letting go and letting it wash over you. And Raya.
Peace and the connection between music and color.
Between what and color? Music and color.
Yeah.
Synesthesia. Beautiful. Anita.
For the learning, depth. For the meditation, resistance.
Depth and resistance. Interesting. And Nancy.
For the learning part, new things, and for the meditation, floating.
Say that again. I didn't hear you. The last one.
For the learning part, new things, and for the meditation, floating.
Floating. Yes, so we have flowing and floating and interconnectedness. So you got all kinds of qualities that you just sort of took in the realm of Yetzirah, really, in your emotional body. And maybe there are some things that will stick in your mind, but it's less important. You'll go over them and over them in different ways, and it will click when 2 or 3 or 4 points come together, and then you'll have it. So count the Omer, read, come to class, meditate. All of these are avenues and gateways to an inner knowing and to a receiving, which is Kabbalah.
Ah.
Thank you. Until next.